Hi, it's Wyndham. How clear are you on what your job is? Now, that could be interpreted as how clearly does your business, the company you work for or the company you own, communicate the expectations on you. But I want us to go back a step. I want us to zoom out another layer. Many years ago, I remember seeing a video, an interview with Brian Cranston, the actor. And he was giving some advice to young actors. And he said the most powerful thing he came to realise was that he was going to auditions trying to get the job. And he had this realisation that as an actor, his job was not to get a job. His job was to read the text, create his interpretation of what he read on the page, create something interesting and compelling, and then go to the audition space and present that, and then walk away. Because the decision as to whether he got hired or not was not his. If his interesting and compelling interpretation of the character didn't meet the director's vision for the piece, then he wasn't going to get the job. But his job was to create something compelling and interesting and then leave that up to the people making a decision. So he would leave those auditions and pretty much forget about them. So why is that of any relevance to us? You know, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say there are very few actors who watch these videos. And I'm going to say that not because I don't think it's appropriate or aligned with actors, but there are a small number of actors in the world, and this is a very small channel, and the likelihood is very low. But I had a similar reflection. Because at the beginning of my career, I went through jobs at a rate of knots because I'd fallen into a career in sales which I didn't really want to do, which is driven by the offer of financial reward for doing whatever the business wants you to do, and I wasn't money motivated. So I would end up in this cycle of being in jobs between 3 and 6 months. Typically in a sales role, they probably give you 3 months to show that you're up to speed and you are going to deliver on the numbers. And anyone who's worked in sales will tell you that it's a binary thing. You either hit your numbers and you stay, or you miss your numbers and you are got rid of. So I spent the early part of my career spending between 3 and 6 months in a job and then having to get another job. Because I didn't care. It wasn't something that aligned deeply with me. But while I was trying to get another job, I lacked the confidence to look outside of sales. And the recruitment consultants, who were the gatekeepers to jobs, as far as I was concerned, looked at my experience and narrowed the options. Well, you've done sales, therefore you're a salesperson, therefore we'll only put you forward for sales jobs. So I would find myself going to these interviews and having to psych myself up. Because in my head, I remember saying to myself, my job is to get them to offer me the job because then the choice is mine. But that intention, well, what comes after that intention? So what comes after that intention for me was, okay, so if my job is to get them to offer me the job, I have to portray the person they want to hire. At no point did I even consider that I would just go in and be myself, because at that point, I knew if I did, they would say, why do you want this job? And I'd say, I really don't, but I have to pay the rent. And nobody is going to hire that person. So I would psych myself up. On the train into the centre of London, I would think the kind of thoughts I needed to think in order to create this character that they could see working in their organisation. And I assumed a whole load of things. Because of my experiences in sales, I had met a lot of people who were successful in the definition of those roles. And they were, in my memory, always bullish. They were confident to the point of arrogant. They acted in a way that made it look like they were as thick-skinned as nothing could touch them. So I would start creating this character. And essentially, as I was creating this character, I was pulling armour around myself. Because fundamentally, one, I didn't really know who I was. And two, I was certain that whoever that person wasn't good enough. That these opportunities were so sparse and so scarce that if I didn't get them to offer me the job, I was in the wind. I was untethered and was going to be blown away. And so once I had this reflection many years later, I call it the interview trap, but it applies to far more instances in our lives than just job interviews. It actually applies to every single interaction we have with other people. Because think about the last time you walked into a room full of people you didn't know. Think about the stories you told yourself about that room. There's a lot of talk at the moment about imposter syndrome and the fact that it isn't a syndrome, it isn't really real. All it is us pushing ourselves outside our comfort zone, and that's entirely normal. But we've syndromicized it like it's an illness. Of course it's not. It just feels uncomfortable because we don't do it very often. But think of those moments when you meet new people. What are you bringing to that moment? What is your intention in that moment? Is your intention in that moment, hey man, I'm going to be me. And it's okay if me being me is not what you need or what you want or a person you want to spend time with. That is absolutely cool. I'll go and have a chat with somebody over there. Now look back on my interactions, and that is not how I would approach it. I would be a bit standoffish. I could be very friendly, don't get me wrong, but was it performative? It probably was to some degree. I to some degree it had to be, because I didn't know who I really was. I'd played these characters for so long. I'd performed in a way for so long. And as one of my previous videos spoke about growth mindset, I was fixed in what I thought I believed. So I was playing a character even then. And it's still something that resonates with me today. It's this idea that, I'm on this self-rediscovery adventure. And that is opening me up to things that 10 years ago I would have derided. And I have long-standing friendships, very long-standing friendships. And there is part of my brain that tells me these people are going to think you've lost it because of the things you are talking about, some of the practices you now have, and some of the ideas you are beginning to entertain. They're so far past what I used to be like that part of my brain is trying to persuade me I'm going to be judged for them. And thankfully, I'm far enough into this adventure that I recognize that external judgment is born from internal judgment. Now, then we might not be judging the same thing. So somebody looks at me and judges me for having a meditation and an Om practice. they're not judging me because they meditate and Om and think it's stupid. But there is something within them that they judge themselves for. Potentially the lack of those things, the lack of their ability to step outside the rigid boundaries of what they know. But any and every external judgment is in some part caused by an internal judgment. Once we accept ourselves completely, it's very difficult to judge other people because we've looked at the dark places in our own mind. We've made friends with the trolls running around in our own head beating us up. We've understood them, we've bridged to them, we've gone, hey, look man, I get you're afraid, but it's okay, I've got this, don't worry. And as soon as we do that, as soon as we look at all those things that used to make us guilty and feel shame and we didn't want to share because we had this deep fear of rejection, as soon as we look at those and embrace them and see them for what they really are, then we recognize that everybody else is the same. And it's very difficult to judge people from that place. It's not impossible. You do need to be vigilant. But it becomes so much harder. And so when you are in these environments, when you are going into new one-to-one engagements or one-to-many engagements, are you clear on what your job is? Because we have we're not that long out of a global pandemic. And look around the world, we have pandemics of all sorts of bad things. And I use the word bad, carefully because it's what's good and what's bad. But what is your job in any given situation? Because every time we step into a situation and we believe our job is to be accepted, is to behave in a way that is okay with other people, then we are deprioritizing ourselves. We are over-prioritizing other people. And the reality is, very few people have this level of awareness. We are not taught this stuff. And if you are prioritizing other people, their feelings, their sensitivities, their whatever it might be, by an act of, brain's not working this morning, but the opposite of, not the opposite. If you are doing that, then the guaranteed outcome is you're deprioritizing yourself. As a world, we know what it looks like to have cookie cutters of people. You look at the world of employment at the moment, and there is a real push to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion, and create working environments where people feel they can be themselves. But we are not there yet. And for as long as you are pretending, that's a big weight on our shoulders. So can we bring Brian Cranston with us? Can we say to ourselves, my job, we're not necessarily actors, so we're not creating anything. It's the activity we are involved in is the opposite of what Cranston is saying, but the essence is the same. We aren't creating a version of ourselves for other people. Flies. Can we walk into these spaces and be ourselves? And that be enough? And recognize that not everybody is going to care for that. And that's okay. I don't need to be liked by everybody. But first and foremost, I want to be liked by myself. And for the decades that I was pretending, I hated myself. And that's a really painful, dark place to be. So, I leave you with that. What do you think your job is when you go into a new environment, when you meet new people? Is it to get them to like you? Or is it just to be you? I wish you a peaceful and joyful few days, and I will speak to you soon.